14 years. That is how long I invested in a family that never truly carried my name in their hearts. When I married Megan, I did not inherit children. I inherited history. Logan was 8. Braden was 6. Old enough to remember Kevin. Old enough to measure me against him. Every look they gave me in those early years felt like an audit. I wasn't stepping into an empty space. I was stepping into a comparison. Kevin was inconsistent, absent more than present. Promises without follow-through. Birthday calls that came late. Child support that arrived even later. But he had one thing I could never acquire. Blood. I never tried to erase him. That was my first mistake. I believed if I showed up consistently, if I paid the bills, attended the school conferences, fixed the broken faucets, and stayed steady through every storm, the scoreboard would eventually balance itself. I was naive. In the beginning, I worked quietly. 2 promotions in 5 years. Longer hours. Bigger responsibilities. I told myself it was temporary, just until the boys were older, just until we had breathing room. Every paycheck was divided before it even hit the account. Mortgage, school supplies, sports fees, summer camps, insurance. Kevin drifted in and out like weather. I became climate. When Logan developed a fascination with computers in high school, I was the one who bought the equipment. Custom build. Not cheap. I remember the look on his face when he powered it on. Not gratitude, not exactly. More like expectation fulfilled. As if, of course, it would be there. When Braden wanted private baseball coaching, I rearranged my schedule and my finances to make it happen. I stood behind the fence during practices, sometimes alone, sometimes next to Megan. Kevin attended 1 game in 3 years. 1. He arrived late and left early. Still, the boys glowed when he showed up. I told myself that didn't matter. What mattered was structure, stability, foundations. By the time Logan entered college, I had already mapped out how to pay for it. I liquidated a portion of a portfolio I'd been building since my 20s. Not because I had to, but because I didn't want loans hanging over his future. I remember sitting at the kitchen table explaining interest rates and debt burdens. He nodded politely, eyes already drifting toward his phone. Tuition cleared, housing covered, books prepaid. No ceremony, no acknowledgement. Just the quiet assumption that this was how things were supposed to work. Braden followed 2 years later. Different temperament, more impulsive, less academic. He struggled his first semester and floated the idea of dropping out. Megan panicked. I didn't. I offered alternatives. Trade school, apprenticeship, business certification. He chose the auto repair path. I funded it. The garage lease, the hydraulic lifts, diagnostic equipment, insurance. 6 months of operating runway. I stood inside that empty concrete box before opening day, dust floating in slanted sunlight, and felt pride rising in my chest. Not because my name would be on the sign, it wasn't. It read, Braden's Performance Auto. My name was on the loan. I never asked to be placed on the signage. I only asked to be treated like I existed. Then came Logan's startup. He pitched it one evening at dinner, an app, ambitious projections, venture capital dreams. Megan's eyes sparkled like he had just announced he'd cure a disease. I listened carefully, asked practical questions. Revenue model, burn rate, market saturation. He bristled. You don't get it, he said. This is how innovation works. I wrote the check anyway. Seed funding. More than I had ever given anyone outside my own bloodline. Structured as an investment, though no formal paperwork was signed. We're family, Megan said. No need to complicate it. Family. That word would follow me like a shadow. The Arizona townhouse development was the largest leap. Logan insisted real estate was the future. Braden wanted diversification. Megan called it destiny. A multi-unit residential build outside Flagstaff, marketed as a modern, family-designed community project. I handled the financing architecture, credit lines under my name, personal guarantees tied to my assets, risk assessment, construction insurance. I negotiated rates. I met with lenders. I absorbed the liability. They handled branding. Social media posts began appearing within weeks. Our vision, our first major development, built from the ground up by two brothers determined to create legacy. Two brothers. The first time I saw that caption, I felt something small shift inside my chest. Not anger, not yet, just displacement. At family gatherings, introductions changed. This is Logan and Braden, they're developers now. Megan would beam. Then, after a pause, and this is my husband, not partner, not backer, not co-founder, just an accessory. Kevin resurfaced more often during that period. He attended a pre-launch celebration dinner, walked through the model unit with exaggerated admiration, clapped Logan on the back. "That's my boy," he said loudly. No one corrected him. I stood beside the kitchen island, glass in hand, listening to guests praise the boy's entrepreneurial spirit. One investor asked who structured the financing. Logan answered before I could speak. "We hustled. 14 years of structured sacrifice reduced to a marketing verb." That night, when the guests left and the champagne glasses were stacked in the sink, I mentioned it to Megan quietly. It felt like I wasn't part of it. She sighed. Not angrily, not kindly, just tired. "Don't make it about you," she said. "You know the boys appreciate you." Appreciation. A word spoken easily, rarely demonstrated. Over time, invitations shifted. Business dinners I wasn't included in. Strategic decisions finalized without consultation. Bank notifications I discovered after the fact. When I asked questions, I was told not to micromanage. Micromanage. The man underwriting the risk accused of interference. At home, the tone changed too. Subtle. Controlled. Logan began correcting me in conversations. Braden started addressing me by my first name more often than Dad. Kevin's opinions carried increasing weight, despite his absence from every financial ledger. I started noticing patterns. When profits were discussed, they said "we." When obligations surfaced, they said "you." I was the emergency fund, the guarantor, the silent absorber of fallout. And still I stayed steady, because I believed in long arcs, in delayed recognition, in the quiet dignity of endurance. 14 years of school pickups, hospital bills, tax filings, and strategic rescues. 14 years of birthdays funded, graduations sponsored, ventures stabilized. I never once demanded public gratitude. I only needed one thing: respect. And even that, apparently, was too expensive. The imbalance didn't explode overnight. It accumulated like compound interest, subtle, exponential, invisible until suddenly undeniable. Looking back now, I can see the ledger clearly. Assets provided: stability, capital, presence, protection. Return received: utility, assumption, revisionist history. They were building a narrative, and I was being edited out of it. I just didn't know the final cut would premiere on my own anniversary. 14 years of marriage. That was what the reservation celebrated. Megan chose the restaurant in Austin, soft lighting, private room, the kind of place where conversations are meant to sound important. Logan said he wanted it to feel elevated. Braden handled the logistics. They insisted it was their gift to us. I should have noticed the tone. It wasn't warmth. It was presentation. When we arrived, the table was already set. Wine breathing in crystal decanters. Linen folded with surgical precision. The boys stood when Megan entered. They hugged her first. Long proud. I received a handshake from Logan and a brief nod from Braden. "Big night," Logan said. I smiled. I meant it. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe this was acknowledgement. That perhaps 14 years had accumulated into something visible. Something they were ready to recognize publicly. Dinner unfolded in controlled elegance. Courses timed perfectly. Stories rehearsed. Logan spoke about the Arizona development's momentum. Braden described expansion plans for the auto shop. Megan beamed between them like a queen surveying heirs. My name appeared rarely in their narratives. When it did, it sounded administrative. He helped with some paperwork early on. He's always been good with numbers. Helped. Numbers. 14 years reduced to clerical assistance. I let it pass. I told myself this wasn't the moment to correct history. Tonight was celebration. Halfway through the main course, Logan raised his glass. To Mom, he said, for believing in us before anyone else did. Applause from Braden, from Megan, from the small group of close friends invited to witness this intimate family milestone. I raised my glass too. Believing is important. Funding is more so, but belief photographs better. Dessert arrived. A custom cake with 14 years strong, scripted in gold icing. The waiter dimmed the lights slightly. The room tightened around us. Logan stood again. We actually have something special tonight, he said, smiling with theatrical restraint. Braden reached into his jacket pocket and placed something on the table between Megan and me. Keys. New keys. Polished. Heavy. Decorative tag still attached. Megan gasped. You didn't. We did. Braden interrupted gently. The new house is officially ours. Ours. I felt the words settle in the room like fog. Logan leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward me with something almost playful behind them. And just so we're clear, he said lightly, you won't be giving any speech tonight. There was laughter around the table. Casual. Assumed. I blinked once, unsure I'd heard correctly. Our real dad built this, Braden added, the corner of his mouth lifting. Not you. The words were delivered calmly, cleanly, like a line practiced in advance. Not shouted. Not emotional. Just factual. For a split second, I searched Megan's face for correction, for reflexive defense, for discomfort. She adjusted her napkin. Don't make it all about you, she said softly. The room didn't freeze. It continued breathing. A few guests shifted awkwardly. One attempted a nervous chuckle. Someone reached for wine. I didn't move. In that moment, clarity didn't arrive as anger. It arrived as alignment. For years, I had sensed the narrative shifting. Tonight, it was finalized. Kevin, who had never guaranteed a loan, never transferred a tuition payment, never absorbed a financial risk tied to their ventures, was now publicly credited as builder. I was administrative support, optional, replaceable. I looked at the keys resting between us. They gleamed under candlelight. I knew something none of them acknowledged. The financing structure for that house ran through investment streams tied to me, through credit foundations anchored by my assets, through capital that could be withdrawn as easily as it had been extended. But I didn't speak, because if I defended myself in that room, I would confirm Megan's accusation, making it about me. Instead, I leaned back, folded my hands, let the applause rise and fall. Logan continued. We wanted tonight to celebrate the people who truly believed in our vision from the beginning. People. Plural. I counted. Kevin. Present in spirit. Occasionally in person. Megan. Emotional advocate. The brothers. Self-described founders. My absence was deliberate. The speech ended. The candles flickered. Someone suggested a toast to legacy. Braden clinked his glass against Logan's. Megan reached across the table to squeeze their hands. No one reached for mine. I felt no surge of rage. Only arithmetic. 14 years of contributions. One sentence of erasure. I realized something then. Something colder than humiliation. They believed their own revision. In their story, I had been scaffolding. Temporary. Functional. Removed once structure appeared stable. Kevin was myth. I was mechanism. My silence at that table was not weakness. It was decision. When the check arrived, Logan reached for it quickly. We've got this, he said. I nodded. Of course they did. On paper. Outside the restaurant, the Austin air was warm and humid. Megan linked her arm through mine as we walked to the car. You were quiet tonight, she observed. I was listening, I replied. To what? To how the story sounds when I'm not in it. She frowned slightly. You're being dramatic. No, I was being precise. The drive home passed in minimal conversation. Logan and Braden followed in their own car. I watched their headlights in the rearview mirror for several miles before they turned off toward their respective places. At a red light, Megan exhaled. You know they didn't mean to hurt you. I kept my eyes forward. Intent doesn't change accuracy, I said. She looked at me sharply. What does that mean? It means they defined my role tonight. Publicly. I'm simply accepting it. She dismissed it with a small shake of her head. You're overthinking. Maybe. Or maybe I was finally thinking clearly. When we reached home, I didn't go to bed immediately. I went to my office instead, closed the door, turned on the desk lamp. The anniversary cake box sat on the kitchen counter downstairs. Untouched, I opened my laptop, not impulsively, methodically. The words replayed once more in my head. Our real dad built this, not you. Very well. If I did not build it, then I did not sustain it. And for the first time in 14 years, the ledger in my mind balanced. This wasn't about pride. It was about truth. They had rewritten the foundation. I was about to accept their edit literally. Clarity is quieter than anger. It does not shout. Calculates. 12 days. That's how long it took me to dismantle 14 years of support. The morning after the anniversary dinner, I woke before Megan. The house was still. No arguments. No tension thick in the air. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint blue light of early dawn pressing through the blinds. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt aligned. For years, my actions and their words had not matched. I funded. They credited someone else. I guaranteed. They minimized. I stabilized. They mythologized Kevin. Now the narrative was clean. If I did not build it, I did not owe it. I went to my office with a cup of black coffee and opened every folder tied to the Arizona project. Investment agreements, loan guarantees, capital transfer schedules. My name appeared everywhere it mattered. Not on Instagram, not on promotional materials, but on risk. I began with the construction credit line in Flagstaff. It was secured against a portion of my personal portfolio and backed by my guarantee. Without it, liquidity would tighten within 72 hours. I called the bank at 8:03 a.m. The conversation was polite, professional. I cited strategic reallocation, risk repositioning, no emotion, just numbers. By 10:17 a.m., the withdrawal notice was in motion. Next, I contacted the investment vehicle holding the development capital. My equity share was significant enough that removal would destabilize the operating budget. I exercised my exit clause. Quietly, legally, completely. No warning call to Logan. No dramatic email. Just paperwork. On day 3, I closed the personal guarantee attached to Braden's equipment expansion loan. It did not shutter his auto shop, not immediately, but it altered his borrowing capacity overnight. Without my backing, interest rates would spike. Credit ceilings would drop. He would feel it. Day 5, I initiated the sale listing for the Montana mountain cabin. The cabin where every summer photo had been taken. Where Megan liked to say, "This is where our family became whole." The cabin was in my name. Not Kevin's. Not Logan's. Not Braden's. Mine. Within 48 hours, an interested buyer placed a conditional offer. I accepted. Day 7. I terminated funding for the new residential complex. The boys had already begun advertising as their first independent success. I reviewed the marketing materials before finalizing the decision. Independent. The word almost amused me. Day 9, I restructured personal accounts. Transferred liquid reserves out of shared visibility. Reduced exposure. Tightened access. Megan noticed the change in my routine. "You've been busy," she observed one evening. "I have," I replied. "With what?" "Aligning definitions." She frowned. "You're still upset about dinner." No, I was resolved. On day 12, the bank froze the project accounts. That was when the phone calls began. Logan first. "What did you do?" he demanded, skipping greetings. "Clarify my role," I answered calmly. "The account's locked. Contractors are calling. What's going on?" "You said your real dad built it. I'm allowing him to sustain it." Silence. Then sharper. You can't just pull funding like that. We're mid-phase. I can. And I did. You're sabotaging us. No, I said evenly. I'm stepping back from something I was publicly excluded from. He hung up without another word. Braden called 30 minutes later. Less anger. More confusion. They're saying the guarantee was withdrawn. That our credit exposure changed. Is this some kind of leverage play? No. Then what is it? Consistency. He didn't understand. They wouldn't, not yet. By day 14, contractors had paused work. Buyers who had placed deposits began requesting reassurance. The reassurance did not come. Logan continued posting photos online, smiling beside the new house keys, captioned, "Next chapter begins." For a brief moment, I almost admired the confidence. Until the first bank rejection letter arrived at their office. Then the laughter thinned. Megan confronted me that evening in the kitchen. "What is happening?" she asked, voice tight. "I'm no longer financially attached to projects I didn't build," I said. Her face went pale. "You withdrew." "Yes." "All of it." "Yes." She gripped the edge of the counter as if steadying herself. "They're going to lose everything." I met her eyes. Then perhaps the foundation wasn't what they thought it was. Her voice sharpened. "This is punishment." "No," I said quietly. "It's acceptance." She stared at me as though seeing someone new. "Why didn't you warn them?" "They were clear at dinner." I respected that. For the first time in years, she didn't have a quick response. Because numbers do not respond to sentiment. Within days, buyers began pulling deposits from the townhouse development. Without the liquidity buffer my capital provided, timelines slipped. Missed deadlines trigger clauses. Clauses trigger panic. Kevin was called. I know because Logan left a voicemail on speaker while pacing the living room. "Dad, we need help. Just temporary. We'll figure it out." Kevin promised to see what he could do. He couldn't. He didn't even have enough to cover the down payment on the new house they'd paraded at our anniversary dinner. The illusion cracked slowly. Then all at once. One afternoon, Megan sat at the dining table with financial statements spread before her. I watched her eyes scan numbers she had never examined closely before. Risk exposure. Capital contribution percentages. Guarantee allocations. The truth was arithmetic. She looked up at me, stunned. "You carried all of this?" "Yes." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Why didn't you ever say it like this?" "Because I thought respect would grow naturally." It hadn't. By week 3, construction in Flagstaff had halted entirely. The social media posts stopped. Logan's tone shifted from confident to defensive. Braden's calls grew less frequent. They weren't laughing anymore. The house keys still existed. But without liquidity, the mortgage approval stalled. Without my backing, debt ratios changed. Reality is less forgiving than pride. One evening, Braden came over alone. He didn't sit. He stood in the living room, shoulders tight. "Can this be reversed?" he asked. "It can," I said. His eyes lifted, hopeful. "But it won't." He swallowed. "You're really going to let everything collapse?" "I'm not letting it collapse," I corrected. "I'm refusing to hold it up invisibly." He had no reply, because invisibility had been the design. The cabin sold 2 weeks later. When I signed the final documents, I felt no triumph, no revenge, only symmetry. They defined me as non-foundational. I removed the foundation. Now the structure would reveal what it truly was. Not through shouting, through absence. And absence, I have learned, is louder than any argument. First they laughed. Not loudly, not in my face, but in that dismissive, almost amused way people laugh when they think someone is bluffing. Logan posted another photo with the house keys 2 days after the account freeze. Wide smile. Caption: "Delays are normal in development. Vision always wins." Comments flooded in: congratulations, fire emojis, admiration. Braden told friends at the shop that financing was just being restructured. He said it casually, like a temporary inconvenience, like weather passing over solid ground. Megan tried to act normal at home. She cooked dinner. She folded laundry. She avoided mentioning numbers. But I saw her checking her phone more often. I saw the tension in her jaw every time it vibrated. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I waited, because banks do not respond to optimism. They respond to liquidity. The first formal rejection came on a Tuesday afternoon. Logan called, but this time his voice lacked the sharp edge of accusation. It was tight, compressed. "They denied the bridge extension," he said. "I see," I replied. "They're saying our risk profile changed. That guarantor withdrawal shifted our ratios. They won't reopen the line without new collateral." Silence stretched between us. He exhaled slowly. "Can you just step back in? Temporarily, just to stabilize things." "Stabilize what?" I asked evenly. "The project. The one I didn't build?" He didn't respond immediately. "This isn't about that," he muttered. "It is exactly about that." Click. He hung up again. But this time it wasn't rage. It was uncertainty. By Thursday, contractors began calling Braden directly. Work paused means payroll stalls. Suppliers require deposits. Without active credit flow, deliveries stop. The development site in Flagstaff sat half-finished under open sky. Rebar exposed. Concrete curing without continuation. A structure suspended in indecision. Buyers who had placed deposits started asking questions. Is the timeline shifting? Is financing secure? Should we be concerned? Concern spreads faster than confidence. Within a week, 3 deposit withdrawals were requested. That's when the laughter disappeared. Logan came to the house unannounced on Sunday. No dramatic entrance. No raised voice. Just a man who suddenly understood gravity. He sat across from me at the dining table where I had once explained compound interest to him before college. "This is spiraling," he admitted quietly. "Yes," I said. "We didn't realize how much was tied to you." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "We thought the project had matured past needing you directly. Needing, not respecting. Needing." "And Kevin?" I asked. His jaw tightened. "He can't help." Of course he couldn't. Kevin had built mythology, not margin. Braden tried next. He drove to see Kevin in person. I know because Megan told me, her voice strained. "He's trying," she said. "They're both trying." "Trying what?" "To fix this." "With what?" She had no answer. Kevin eventually called me. Not to apologize. Not to acknowledge. Just to negotiate. "Look," he began, tone defensive. "The boys are under pressure. You don't want this blowing up publicly." "Publicly?" I repeated. "You know, investors talk. So do anniversary dinners," I said. A pause. "You're being vindictive." "No," I replied. "I'm being consistent." "You're going to let your wife's kids sink?" They clarified I wasn't foundational. "That's just pride talking." "No," I said calmly. "It's arithmetic." He had nothing else to offer. Because arithmetic doesn't bend to ego. The second bank rejection arrived 3 days later. This one formalized the mortgage denial for the new house. Without stable project income and without my financial backing, debt-to-income ratios no longer qualified. The keys they had displayed at dessert were symbolic only. Paperweight symbols. Braden stopped posting updates from the shop expansion. He quietly delayed equipment upgrades. Suppliers began requesting shorter payment cycles. Logan deleted 2 celebratory posts. Megan finally sat down with the full ledger. I watched her study it. Contribution percentages. Guarantee structures. Withdrawal notices. Her breathing changed as realization set in. "You were carrying 80% of the exposure," she whispered. "Yes. And we." She stopped. "And you credited someone else," I finished. Her eyes filled, but I felt no triumph. Just confirmation. The illusion of the real builder began collapsing in layers. First the credit freeze. Then the contractor pause. Then the buyer withdrawals. Then the mortgage denial. Reality dismantles fantasy methodically. Logan returned one evening with a different energy. Not defiant. Not angry. Afraid. We might lose the entire development, he admitted. Yes, I said. All because of one dinner? No, I corrected quietly. Because of 14 years of erasure. His eyes lifted sharply. That's not fair. Neither was being removed from my own foundation. He leaned back in his chair, defeated. We thought you'd always be there. There it was. Not respect. Assumption. Exactly, I said. Braden followed 2 days later. He looked exhausted. Can we renegotiate? He asked. Terms. Equity adjustments. Anything. Why? So it doesn't collapse. Why should I prevent collapse of something I didn't build? His voice cracked slightly. Because we're family. Family. The word returned, but thinner now. Family doesn't publicly rewrite history, I said. He had no counterargument. Meanwhile, Kevin stopped answering their calls as frequently. His earlier promises of figuring something out faded into logistical excuses. I'm working on it. Markets are tight. Give me a week. Weeks cost money. Money they no longer had access to. The development site in Flagstaff grew quiet. Wind moving through half-frame structures. Materials sitting idle. Contractors seeking other work. Buyers requested refunds. Refunds required liquidity. Liquidity had withdrawn itself. At home, the atmosphere shifted from indignation to desperation. Megan approached me one night after reviewing the mortgage denial letter for the new house. They truly believed Kevin built this, she said softly. I know, but the numbers don't support that. No. She sank into a chair, face pale. For the first time, I'm seeing it clearly. Clarity often arrives too late to prevent consequence. The boys had believed the myth because it was easier. It preserved lineage, preserved identity. It required no confrontation of dependency. Now dependency stood exposed. Not on Kevin. On me. And I had stepped back. Logan stopped calling daily. Pride erodes under sustained pressure. Braden's tone softened with each conversation. One evening, I overheard them speaking quietly in the driveway. This isn't stabilizing, Logan muttered. We miscalculated, Braden replied. Miscalculated. Yes, they had miscalculated permanence. They assumed I would always underwrite their confidence. That I would absorb every risk invisibly. That I would never align my actions with their words. The laughter from earlier weeks felt distant now, replaced by silence, by spreadsheets, by rejection notices, by reality, and somewhere beneath the financial collapse, something deeper fractured. The illusion that Kevin was the architect, the illusion that I was optional. Illusions survive only while funded. I withdrew the funding. Now truth was solvent. And truth, unlike pride, does not negotiate.